Okay. Call the meeting to order. In accordance with 940 CMR 2910, remote participation adopted by the Greater Lowell Technical School Committee, April 17, 2014. Committee Chairman Moran, Committeeman O'Hare, Committeeman Sheehan, and Student Rep Karen Vinal will be participating in tonight's meeting remotely. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the United States of America, to the Republic, which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, for all.
Okay. Roll call.
Here.
Mr. O'Hare?
Here.
Mr. Tatius?
Here.
Mr. Gigi?
Here.
Mr. Getchia?
Here.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yeah.
Mr. LeMay? Mr. Moran?
Yes. Okay. Public appearance. We're going to suspend the public appearance portion and then going right into the meeting. School committee communications. Report of the student rep. I'd like to turn it over to student rep Karen Vinal to give the student report.
GLTHS kicked off the 2020-2021 school year with virtual meetings and remote Asst advisor sessions for students interested in participating. Our activities for this year will include our regular competition season, remote community service, and the return of our freshman achievement program. In addition, our officer team attended the Massachusetts All-State Leadership Virtual Conference, where all 8 officers and 1 advisor received their leader awards, as well as proactive awards and chapter engagement awards. Our next event will be a remote version of our annual outreach community outreach challenge, as well as an in-house competition. The Freshman Activities Committee has a meeting weekly with 21 members in attendance. The committee planned a pop culture Kahoot-a-thon competition with all freshmen invited to participate. GSA has been holding discussions on some current matters going on in society, such as World AIDS Day and the coming out of Elliot Page. The students have begun to facilitate their own discussions with one another to further develop the community within GSA, and a couple of students have begun to create artistic visuals for club usage. Lastly, everyone is in the process of brainstorming ideas for the focus of future meetings, and will continue to encourage their friends to join and support the continued growth of our membership numbers. The Math Club is still growing and recently played an American Mathematics competition Kahoot with our members. On November 23rd, they celebrated Fibonacci Day, watching a TED Talk and learning the history behind these famous numbers. Later this month, in the spirit of the holidays, we'll be calculating the cost of the 12 days of Christmas, finding out how fast Santa has to move to deliver all those presents, and estimating the range of Rudolph's nose in a snowstorm. Peer mentoring has matched up the classroom mentors with freshman mentees. Everyone has reported a successful first contact with each other. The mentors created a slide about themselves to help introduce them to their mentees. 2 mentors have volunteered to assist with planning the first whole group meeting on December 17th and will be responsible for running part of the meeting. Anime Club took a virtual tour to Studio Gilby Museum located in Mitaka, Japan. We went behind the scenes of the Gilby Museum studio that created films like Spirited Away and saw fantastic examples of animation at its best. We reviewed and put together a Kahoot's anime adventure, and students were interactive as they shared their true knowledge of anime. National Honor Society and National Technical Honor Society is now in full swing with the selection of new members. Qualifying juniors and seniors were invited to apply and are now working on their applications. Members of this year's application review committee are John Callahan, Stephen King, Charlene Pires, Kayla Tassini, and Robert Voges. We are planning to have a virtual induction ceremony at the end of February or early March. Each year, National Technical Honor Society selects one senior as a recipient of the DAR Good Citizen award to represent our school. This year, our candidate is Daisy Rivas, a senior in engineering. Daisy will be celebrated by DAR at a virtual event in the spring. The senior class helped plan a successful homecoming from home. Students and staff were able to participate in virtual spirit days, a flat earthen photo contest, and homecoming court and royalty elections. The homecoming from home virtual celebration finale with the photos and names of all the winners can be found on our website on the student activities page. And in athletics, Barton All-Stars for the recently competed fall season are as follows. For girls soccer, Athena Mao, Jillian McIsaac, Ashley Santos, and Eliza Song. Boys soccer, David Ossipina, Luigi Ferreira, Brian Camargo, and Sam Prince. Girls cross country are Kaylee Chandonnet, Diana Marquez, and Rebecca Hood. Boys cross country, Ryan Plowman, Albert Ferreras, and Brendan Cayley. And for golf, it's Tim Gaff and Jake Torpey. Winter sports are set to get away on December 14th. Taking to the courts and pool this winter will be our boys and girls basketball teams, as well as our Griffin swimmers and divers. Looking forward to solid seasons from what are typically some of our stronger athletic programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice holiday. Have a nice holiday, Clarence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Approval of the minutes. I need a motion to approve the minutes from the November 19th meeting.
I'll move. Second?
Mr. Bahou?
Roll call.
Yes.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Here.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. LeMay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran? Mr. Moran?
Yes. Report of the treasurer. Need a motion to waive the reading.
Motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bahou?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yeah.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. LeMay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes. Need a motion to approve the expenditures of $3,496,860.
Motion. I'll make that motion. Second.
Okay.
Mr. Bahou?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. LeMay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes. Report of general counsel, not tonight. I would turn the meeting over to the superintendent.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman Moran. The first item on my agenda this evening is that I'm happy to inform the committee that Governor Baker has announced that Greater Lowell Technical High School has been awarded a Skills Capital Grant in the amount of $250,000 for the electronics and engineering technology programs to upgrade the engineering STEM lab to support students, after youth programs, and adult evening students to meet the growing industry demands in electronics and the engineering programs. And I'd just like to take a moment to thank Cheryl Bomo, our grant writer, our Title I coordinator and grant writer, for her support with writing this grant, as well as the teachers and the technical cluster chairpersons for engineering and advanced manufacturing. Thank you.
That is great.
Great.
Good news.
So next on my agenda, I'd like to inform the committee about another grant. Greater Lowell Technical High School was awarded our secondary school virtual coursework grant in the amount of $67,572. This grant is to support access to online course options for students who cannot participate in the in-person learning opportunities offered due to health, safety, or family reasons. The next item on the agenda is our cooperative education report. We currently have, I have an update to that. We currently have 96 students, senior students participating in our cooperative education program as of today, with 6 students pending. This represents approximately 16% of the class of 2021. A copy of that report is in your packet. And I'm also happy to say that our junior co-op has been approved by the state, and juniors will be eligible to go out on co-op after February 8th. More specific details will be forthcoming from the director of co-op. But we're happy to hear this news for our junior students. And again, thank you to our cooperative director, who's doing a wonderful job getting our students out on co-op during the pandemic.
You have 96 people, that's pretty good up during this.
And 6 pending.
Right, that's pretty good considering what we're dealing with.
Okay,
Great
thank
job.
you.
Yeah, that's a great job.
I agree. We gotta give Ms. Bezanson a lot of credit for working
Yes.
hard and being associated with all the businesses, considering we're not in school.
Correct, she's doing an excellent job. Thank you. Next, I'll be seeking approval to amend the admissions policy for the 2021 school year as a result of COVID-19. And I'd like to ask our Director of Technology, Enrollment, and Information, Mrs. Lisa Martinez, to come forward to speak a little bit more about the proposed changes for approval.
Good evening.
So due to the extenuating circumstances that existed in 2019-20 due to the pandemic, the areas of attendance and scholastic achievement will only be scored for the time leading up to March 13th, 2020. This is the proposal that we submitted to DESE in draft, that's been approved in draft form. These 2 categories will not be scored from this date through the end of the 2019-2020 school year. So that's really up to June of last year, of this year. So pass-fail grades from 2019 to 2020 semester 2 will not be utilized. A return to regular attendance and grading has been reinstituted effective starting this fall 2020 per guidance from the Commissioner of Education, and will be utilized as part of the admission process moving forward. For the remainder of the year. The admissions timeline will remain the same, and this was communicated to our sending schools, counselors, and other staff at the virtual counselor info session breakfast, as well as a question and answer service that we held virtually with sending school counselors. Completed applications will continue to require the application form online and as well, along with the 7th and 8th grade academic grades, attendance, discipline, conduct records, and counselor rating. For your convenience, in your packet, basically the changes in language to our admissions policy has been amended for this school year to reflect the policy changes. And this addendum would be, if approved, would be posted up on our website for the remaining school year.
Is there a committee or who oversees the language change?
Sure. So basically, I just put the language change compared. So this was language change was approved by DESE. In draft form, if it's taken today. So the language only reflects basically that time frame from really March 16th until June, the end of the school year from last school year.
Basically last semester, last quarter.
Basically last year's second semester. So the language change was just reflected, make it a lot easier for people to understand for this year, so we changed that language. It was submitted to DESE, was approved in draft form until it's approved by the school committee. Yes.
I have a question. You may have just said it, but I
That's
maybe
okay.
get lost
I'm
behind
sorry.
the face mask a little bit.
Sure.
Under section 6, number 2, Roman numeral 2. It says the application to grade 9, the average of term, I'm sure this is about, in reference to attendance. It says the average of terms 1 and 2 of grade 7 and grade 8. Is that what we've always done, or was it terms 3 and 4 in grade 7 and then 1 and 2 in grade 8?
So in our regular admissions policy, it's quarter 1, 2, 3, 4 of grade 7. So it's the entire year of grade 7 and the first of 2 terms of grade 8. So what's changing is it will be the first 2 terms of grade 7, not 4, for the attendance.
The first 2 terms of grade 7 and the first two terms of grade 8.
Exactly.
Why is that?
Sure. It was due to the pandemic when we had the attendance from March 16th when school closed to the end of the school year.
Okay, so next year, if we begin to go back into full sessions, that would more than likely change back. Is that correct?
Even if it was remote, it would be full because now we're taking full attendance. So as of the beginning of the fall this school year, it's gone back to normal.
Okay, so this is for this year only.
That right, exactly.
Terrific. Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else?
Thank you,
Nice
Lisa.
job.
So,
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we need a vote.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Bahou?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes. Back to the superintendent.
Okay. All right. Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much, and happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
I'd just like to mention that also in your packet is a flyer that's going to be made available to the public in regards to our virtual open house, which will be conducted beginning Tuesday, January 5th through Thursday, January 7th virtually. So there's a little explanation of how we're going to hold our virtual open house this school year. Next on the agenda, I'd be seeking approval for the 2020-21 school improvement plan. And I'd like to ask our Assistant Superintendent Principal, Mr. Michael Barton, to present the proposed plan to the committee.
Good evening, everyone.
The 2020-2021 school improvement plan is a requirement for the Department of Ed, and it is a plan that we submit every year. The plan takes several months to develop, and it's quite a process, and it involves a number of stakeholders. Primarily, it starts with the school council, which is comprised of parents, community members, and students, as well as teachers. That is one group that contributes to it. Another group that contributes to it is the School Improvement Council, which is comprised of, again, teachers, leadership team members. And basically, it's the job of the assistant superintendent principal to put all of the input of the stakeholders together. So really what happens is typically it starts in January, and there's a brainstorming session and a self-assessment that is distributed to a wide variety of people. And the self-assessment focuses on a number of things in terms of school climate and culture, student achievement, professional development, behavior, discipline, a number of different topics that are focused around the curriculum frameworks and evaluations standards. In this instance, there were 3 goals that were developed from these different stakeholders. The first goal focuses on remote learning. So the goal is to, as a result of the pandemic, to focus on remote learning to increase daily participation through discussions, projects, and creative assignments that are relevant and rigorous for all students. So the main objective was to do our best to increase engagement and increase real-life, authentic assignments for students as we started the school year this year. So it comprised lessons learned last spring, to try to create the best possible online environment for students. Within that, we did, as you know, because we've talked about this before, a considerable amount of professional development online, so people become familiar with Google Classroom and all of the different software tools. It comprised some education on how to use video cameras, how to demonstrate things in shop areas. It comprised a huge amount of, I guess, utilization of different software to try to increase attendance, to try to maintain attendance, and try to maintain engagement for kids through the beginning of the school year. So that was the primary focus. Naturally, it was a result of the pandemic, and it was a result of, again, things we learned, things that we had gleaned in spring when the pandemic had been thrust upon us. So that's the first goal that we've been focusing on literally since August. The second goal focuses on cultural bias. So it looks at looking at a school-wide discussion amongst a core group of people to begin at looking at biases in terms of culture, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of demographics, in terms of socioeconomic features. Right now there's a core group of 16 people that will be taking a course through Cornell University that focuses on deconstructing cultural biases. The main purpose of that course and the main purpose of this work is to improve the school climate, improve people's awarenesses of culture, ethnic cultures within our community, with the hope of having a school-wide discussion on cultural proficiency as we move forward this year and into the next year. Ultimately, our goal is to create a culture that people recognize people's differences, to have an environment where it reduces certain student behaviors and a reduction of disciplinary referrals to try to create a more aware, welcoming, and accepting environment. So that's goal number 2. And then the third goal is a continuation of some work that we've been doing for the last several years. And that's to, again, raise awareness of mental health concerns among the social emotional well-being of all school community members, particularly the young adult students. I'm sure you've read in the paper that there's been a considerable influx in attention to mental health among teens as a result of the pandemic. This is something that we have been working on for a number of years, and it's a real continuation of making our staff aware of students' experiences in terms of trauma, in terms of poverty, in terms of grief, social skill, anger, coping skills, substance abuse. And the goal, again, for that is to, again, create a more welcoming environment, reduce referrals, disciplinary referrals, to provide counseling for students, and to offer a tiered system of approach so that all community members in the school are not only sensitive to this, but they have the resources to act based on their capacity so that we can meet the needs of our students. So we've done a considerable amount of work in this area in the last several years. This fall, we had 2 sessions already focused on this that were very well received by the faculty. There's a social emotional learning committee that really sort of steers this work. So with that umbrella of the school improvement community, which is, again, made of a bunch of different stakeholders, including students, community members, parents, teachers, and leadership team members, all of this work comes together in this school improvement plan. And that's really the driving force between a lot of the areas of focus for this school year, and I'm sure into next school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank
for
you.
that presentation,
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
I need a motion to approve the school improvement plan.
So moved.
Second.
Second it.
Mr. Bahou?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yeah.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yeah. Back to the superintendent.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Mike.
Barton. And thank you to all the members of the school community who were part of developing the school improvement plan. The next item on my agenda is providing the committee with an update in regards to the reopening task force and their work. So currently, the reopening task force has met 3 times and is working on a hybrid plan to give our upper class students more in-person learning, time in their technical programs, as asked by the committee, to work on trying to get our students in 4 days per week when it's safe to return to school. And this would mean that their academics would be full remote. After these 3 meetings, the committee is working through several challenges. Breakfast is one of the challenges. PE and health, which occurs during a student shop week, as well as grade 10 math, which also occurs through a student shop week, as well as the spacing in several shops, which has limited spacing. So the team is working through those challenges right now. They're definitely getting very close to resolving the PE, health, and grade 10 math issues to be able to do this, and continuing to work on some spacing in the technical programs. At the same time, they are looking at a hybrid A to continue for the grade 9 students, which would mean they would return 1 day each week. And also looking more closely at bringing the 9th grade students in on Wednesdays to provide them with a hands-on experience for those exploratories that they didn't have the opportunity to get a hands-on experience for while we were in full remote. So those are the things that the task force is aggressively working on. We will be meeting again tomorrow, and I'll hear more from them on where they are with planning for that. Any questions in regards to the task force? So based on the trends in the current health data and maintaining our commitment to prioritizing the safety of our students and staff, I'm also making a recommendation tonight that we continue with our current remote learning model after the holiday break, and continue to work with the Lowell Department of Health until it is safe to bring our students back to school. And we'll continue to monitor the trends and update our families accordingly when we're getting closer to making a determination of when it is safe to return to school. I'm also going to recommend that our current English language learners and our current students with intensive special education needs do not return to in-person learning until January 11th, which would give a 14-day period after December 25th, which would take care of a quarantining period to ensure safety for their return. Any questions?
Oh, that makes sense, Christmas is there.
So I think what we learned from after the Thanksgiving holiday break, that to take that extra time period to cover a 14-day quarantine period it's ensuring safety, because we learned that many people who did not practice safety protocols, or who were exposed to COVID-19, there was an increase after the holiday. So in order to avoid that, I think taking that extra week to enable a 14-day period would ensure safety for the return of those staff and students.
Are we set up right now for testing in the building that we get the grant for?
So we have submitted our checklist, and we have requested for the test kits. We are going to be allotted 320 test kits. They have not arrived yet, but we have submitted our checklist and requested for those kits. So we are awaiting them, and I'm not sure when they will be arriving, but we have done our part to submit the paperwork that we needed to do to be able to receive those kits. And as I said, there are 320 test kits. I think we're receiving 2 units at a time, and there's 40 tests in each unit. And they have been ordered. When they are arriving, we have not been
I
told
just hope
yet.
they get here before January 11th. That way we have them for two in the bag.
For
when these
those
kids come
students,
back.
when those students in return. And just to be specific, those are just our students with intensive special
Right.
education needs and basic Title I students.
Yep.
And we'll continue to provide, but not returning until January 11th. I'd also like just to take a moment to thank those teachers and those paraprofessionals and all the staff that have supported those students in the building so that they could continue in-person learning. It's very much appreciated. And I'd just like to take my final moment to say thank you to the entire staff who's been extremely generous during this very difficult time. And we were able to donate over 240 gift cards to CTI. They came this week to pick those gift cards up. So our Greater Lowell family came together to donate for our families in our community. And I'm grateful for that. And the families at CTI are also grateful. Thank you.
Could you,
And, yes,
would it be possible for you to convey to them, for us, for the board, great thanks? And, I don't know if you can post something or at least include the board that we
Sure,
really appreciate.
I could send out tomorrow a thank you to the staff on behalf of the board. I can do that because it was very, very generous of the staff. And it's very grateful that they'll put a smile on a lot of families in need in our community. And
No questions, yeah. Thank you.
and lastly, just a happy holiday to all our families. And thank you. Have a safe and happy holiday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Yep.
Thank you. Report of the business manager.
Good evening, everyone. In your meeting packets, you'll see a memo from myself about continuation of solar leasing / development here at Greater Lowell Technical High School. And as per the request that I received kind of coming into the job here, it was to continue to look at the use of solar energy at the school facility and see if there's a feasible option to continue to do so. And so I've been working with a company called Select Energy. Select Energy works with another partner of ours, Power Options, who was from a state agency that then works with just not-for-profits and government agencies about energy procurement. And we've actually worked with Power Options in the past, last spring when we renegotiated our natural gas contract. They were the top respondent when we issued a request for qualifications and actually ended up getting us a pretty favorable rate at that time with natural gas, but now we're going to look to expand that use potentially into the use of solar. So in the packet on the next 2 pages, you'll see there was 2 options that have been sort of vetted, at least in a preliminary basis, with Select Energy and the district about solar generation here on campus. The first being a pretty substantial solar array on the roof of the school, which would generate nearly 1 megawatt of usable energy. This would be tied directly into our electric meter here at the school, and we would be using the majority of the power, with the remainder being sold off to other municipalities or government agencies. Based on the current electric rates that we see in the preliminary estimates done by Select Energy, it was determined that this would benefit the school by reducing the electricity cost by about $48,000 annually. And savings from, that's the savings from using power that we generate ourselves, as well as selling off the portions that we don't use to other municipalities. This would be a 20-year lease that we sign with Select Energy, where they own the equipment. We don't have a capital outlay up front. This is a solar array that's on our building, but we're effectively leasing the space but then using the power back to get that benefit. Um, so that was the first option. Option 2 is a solar canopy over the majority of the parking area in the rear of the building. This solar canopy produces about 2.2 megawatts of usable power. This system's a little bit different because it would be more expensive, obviously, to construct with the footings and steel supports and everything that go into putting this together and getting it out there. As well as with the amount of electricity that's generated, we don't use nearly that much electricity here within the building itself. So this would have to be tied in directly to the utility or not through our own meter through a separate system. Because of the higher cost in the setup of an array of this sort and the ability not necessarily to use most of the power here on site, the financial benefit of this one is a little bit lower. This would be roughly about $29,000 a year lease payment that we would receive. So it's not going to directly offset the cost. We would still be, or the cost of our electricity, we would still be using some because of the location of generation and getting it to our building. But the majority of it being sold off, we would be receiving revenue as opposed to necessarily reducing cost more.
So Mike, with the revenue coming in, offset what we're using,
It could be, yeah.
so it could be like a wash.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at it either way. It's either going to be held separately for future energy improvements or things along those lines, or we could be using it directly to offset the cost of electricity. So both of these options can be explored further independently or in conjunction. This preliminary information only comes about a month or two of research or so in, so there's still some more vetting that needs to be done. There needs to be studies. We need to have architects look at buildings for support, look at the parking lot for the potential of use and the ground back there. We don't know what's underneath all of that because I wasn't here during construction. And the urgency, so to speak, to get this on the meeting tonight comes from the way that the SMART incentive plan works in Massachusetts for solar development. On an annual basis, the benefit gets reduced to the developers of solar projects. So currently they stand to gain a 26% tax credit on projects that they do for renewable energy like this, which helps to offset the cost of the building of the array or setup of the solar panels on the roof. However, if we were to go to January 1st, that incentive drops down to the next tier in line, which is 22%, which takes away the financial benefit, if not completely in the majority, for doing a project of this type. So I've included on the last, I don't know how many pages this is, about 4 or 5 pages, 5 pages, the letter of intent that was submitted by Select Energy for the school district to submit or to authorize and submit to the SMART program. As long as we're authorized and signed off by January 1st, we'll be locked into the old benefit rate. So even though this is going to take, I won't say years more time to complete the studies and looking at the complete feasibility of this, this locks us into that rate for 4 years. So if for some reason it did get really drawn out, we would still be locked in at that rate. It doesn't carry much of a commitment other than the fact that we are going to continue to explore both options, get down to a finalized lease or PPA agreement with Select Energy. And then at that point, we would be back again for a approval of a finalized option or both options or independent options. And I've been working with legal counsel to review, and I believe Attorney Mello is on the phone as well, and the gentleman from Select that I've been working with, Gary and Scott, are also present for the meeting tonight. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to start trying to field them and yell out for support as I need.
So if we sign this, accept and agree to, there's nothing, we're not locked in, we're just saving the 4% right now.
Yep, so we're just locking in the benefit rate with SMART and getting on their, I guess their projected projects or anticipated projects list at that benefit rate because they basically sell out these blocks of energy development credits, so to speak. I'm using all the wrong terminology because I don't know all of this perfectly myself. But they basically set up blocks of energy, and each time you go up a block, the benefit decreases. So we're at block 10 right now. As of January 1, they anticipate it's moving to block 11, which is that decrease in benefit.
If we sign the letter of intent and we go through all the studies and we come down with these 2 or 3 options available to us, and at that point we decide that we're not interested.
Sure.
Is there any penalty or expense to the school district?
So I'll defer to Scott probably after I answer this to make sure I'm getting it right. But my understanding is that after we go through the next set of studies and not even getting to the studies, getting to the finalized estimates and coming up with a lease or a purchasing agreement, at that point, if it doesn't work out financially or the district wants to back out, there's no penalty to either party because the expense of the studies would come after we had that finalized lease agreement in place. So, Scott, am I correct in what I've stated here?
Yeah, Michael, let me clarify a couple of things that hopefully will shed some light on this. As you mentioned, you're right on. The reason for this letter of intent is so that we can kind of lock you in on a couple of key financial benefits. There really is 2. There's one with the federal, which is the investment tax credit, and that's the one that's dropping from 26 to 22. And then there's the state, which is that block incentive that you talked about, and that's called the SMART tariff. And because you are a public entity, we can enter into the program prior to going through the interconnection applications, which is a heavy lift kind of part of the due diligence process, which we will do as a next step. But you can jump ahead of that because you're a public, and we can get you a block award, okay? So that kind of locks us into as high of an incentive as is available today at the state level, and also as high as an incentive is available at the federal level. So that's the purpose of that LOI. Once we lock you in, we're also going to be doing a whole bunch of work around this interconnection and analysis as you were talking about. What we'll come up with is an estimated power purchase agreement rate for the large system that is behind the meter, kind of offsetting your load. And we would sign a power purchase agreement that would say it would not, you would not have to pay more than that. And if for some reason going through the due diligence, when we're spending money and we find out that we have to have a higher rate and it's something that doesn't make sense for you, you could walk away, no cost, okay? So that's the way we would structure that agreement. Same thing with the lease out in the parking lot. Once we've got a lease contract in place, we do the due diligence from there. The investment money to do that due diligence is really on us. We got to kind of hit that lease rate, and if ultimately we don't, and you want to walk away, then you can. So the goal here is to work together, right, to try and get to a point where we can deliver those savings to the school. And if for some reason, we can't, we're really not asking you to fund any of that. We'd only ask you to stay engaged with us through it and not walk away if we can meet those commitments.
And that would be an ask,
Mike,
not a
I got a
demand.
question.
Is that correct? You'd ask us to go ahead for all your due diligence and all your hard work to move forward with it. However, it wouldn't be a demand. We would not be committed. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I'm breaking up a little bit, but I think the answer to that question is yes. We're not asking you to spend any money or be committed to anything more than if we can hit the rates that we agreed to, then you would proceed ahead with it.
Yeah, see, I'm concerned about the word if.
Hold on. So let me clarify. That's not the rate that's here in the LOI. That would be the rate that's presented in the lease or PPA agreements?
Correct.
Because there's a lot of things that come to mind here. If at some future time, we're giving up our sky rights over the parking lot to increase and put a 5-story building out there to help educate kids, your lease is going to take priority. So there's a lot more to this than meets the eye, and it's going to take the committee here some time to digest. So my concern as a committee member is, I'm okay trying to lock in the best and most favorable rate for you to proceed, but I don't want any expense for doing that, because there's a lot of I's and T's that have not been crossed or dotted, and a lot of questions are coming to my mind, and that's where I'm challenged. It sounds really great on paper, but I get extremely nervous when something sounds good, and then we don't think things through clearly. And I think the sky rights, the option to utilize the parking lot for other purposes, saying we got a brand new roof here without any structural problems or any leakage, that's something that's a little unusual. And to go in and put an array on top of that, and then we're bound for 20 years. That's a long period of time to be bound and really have no option out for what seems to be a modest savings. Can be challenging too. So I guess if you're asking us to work with you to see how this all plays out, I wouldn't be so opposed to it, but I really don't want to be committed if you, and I hear the word if, you meet the numbers.
Now, if I could clarify, so for what we're asking for tonight is nothing more than the ability to go lock those good rates in, okay? Our next step will be starting to work on the due diligence and firming up that we think we can hit from a PPA rate and a lease rate perspective. And by the time we get to asking you to sign something, we'll be having all the discussions that you just brought up, because they're all covered in the lease document and the PPA document that you would be asked to sign. So all those issues will get addressed. We've done almost 600 systems now in Massachusetts, and every single owner is concerned about what happens with the roof, as an example, if you do a rooftop system. So that all gets worked through, right? We will talk about whether you need an attachment or not, and if we use slip sheets underneath it, and make sure we honor your warranty, and that the structural analysis is completely done and it meets code, and we'll go through all that. Okay, that's all part of that process before you would ever, sign a power purchase agreement to put a system on your roof. We'll go through the same sort of due diligence on anything that we would put in the ground there. So you'll have plenty of time to weigh in, discuss all those issues, and make sure it's the right thing for you to do.
Can I ask a question real quick, Matt?
Go ahead, Matt.
Thanks. Mike, you might have said it, but I might have missed it. Has our legal counsel gone over this? And if so, are they present right now? Can they just chime in real quick just to make sure? This is a major step for the district, and I want to make sure that our legal counsel has gone over this from front to back.
Yep.
Yeah, so,
Peter, are you there?
From Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, Lahane, and hi everyone. A pleasure to meet everyone virtually. Although I can't see any faces, but I don't know if you can see me. But yeah, I got brought into the fold, I want to say late last week, and I've had a couple of conversations with Michael, who, I think we're on the same page, and he and I have vetted it internally, and then he's gone back and presented a couple of questions to the folks at Select. And I think there are a couple of other, questions that perhaps remain outstanding that we can, if provided the committee authorizes, vote to authorize us to proceed in negotiating the terms of the letter of intent, we can flesh out more fully. But yeah, I mean, on balance, I think that my understanding of what the document would require the district seems consistent with what Mr. Howe has presented tonight. I guess one question that I would pose is there any scenario in which, like, say that the district signs the letter of intent, is there any scenario in which the district wants to back out of the deal and and wouldn't be allowed to, or at least select would take a position that the district would be, prohibited from extricating itself, so to speak.
Now, at this point, because what we're doing with the letter of intent is really, locking ourselves into the SMART award. There really isn't any reason why you couldn't walk away from it. We're going to work very hard after this to try to get to a point where you want to go ahead with the project, and we have a PPA and a lease, so we can start really spending money against the due diligence process. And that would be kind of a next step for us, going into the new year, right?
So just to be clear, if the district signs a PPA, and we haven't seen a PPA yet, or I haven't seen it yet.
Correct.
The district signs the PPA. The PPA would say, if we achieve this rate for you, you have to agree that you'll move forward.
Correct.
But even if the district signs a letter of intent, say you achieve the best rate, that's conceivably available, the district still could say, you know what, we appreciate it. That's a great rate. You went above and beyond what we anticipated, but we want to back out of it for reasons X, Y, and Z. The district wouldn't be precluded from backing out, and select wouldn't stand in the way of the district backing out at that point, even if it achieved the best, most favorable possible rate.
No, and again, we're not going to know whether we can achieve the best favorable rate until we get to the power purchase agreement, because we're going to have to do some work to make sure we can get there, right? But
until after the power purchase agreement is entered in.
Yeah, is when we're really at. I mean, look, I will say this to everybody tonight. If you guys are really uncomfortable with moving ahead on a solar project, I mean, if there's that much discomfort, I don't want to go do a bunch of work, right? So the LOI is meant to be a pretty light lift, right? It just says, look, we're interested in it. You've presented us some savings ideas here. We're going to work with you to go do the due diligence and see if we can make that happen. But yes, if you really wanted to walk away from it, you could.
I'd like to know who's talking.
That was Scott. That's Scott from Select. I'm one of the partners and owners of Select Energy.
Okay, I mean, you've been going on and on. I don't think you were introduced, but I think at this point, myself, I need a little more research before I go ahead and vote on this.
Personally,
Can I go ahead.
School Committeeman Bahou, personally, I like the idea of the savings as well as the solar panels. However, I am a little uncomfortable, and you did hit on it, as well as Mr. Giggy, fellow school committeeman. We did just invest an awful lot of money in our roof, and I heard you mention warranties, that you would look into it and satisfy everything that's needed. However, I do know that, this was one of those projects that I've been on the school committee for 10 years, and it essentially took about 8 years from the beginning, from when I was here, to complete. And I worry about the roof and what happens on top of it. I also know they were limiting the amount of people up there, saying that, we could really damage the roof if we're up there moving around on it with any regularity. I also sort of question, would that whole roof, would all of our roofs be covered with solar panels? If so, we have a lot of snow coming. A number of years ago, we had a winter that just seemed to never end. And there was a weight constraint happening throughout all of Massachusetts with roofs and flat roofs and possible collapsing and such like that. Greater Lowell Tech chose to go up on our roof and remove as much snow as we could to reduce the weight up there, as did the Songus Arena, as did the hotel over in the city of Lowell, and many other buildings throughout the state of Massachusetts. I just sort of wonder if we ever come into that situation again, what would be something that we could hear from your company that may be helpful and comforting for us.
Sure, this is Scott again for name recognition. We had hundreds of systems that were involved in that snowstorm. I remember exactly what year you're talking about. We had no roof collapses. As I said, we engineer them to support the snow load by code. And that's not to say you can't have an anomaly year where, boy, if it's something that is concerning the school, and we've got a structural engineer that says, boy, it really should come off of there. We actually offer up snow removal services, and we have taken care of that for accounts, in our portfolio. So something we're very used to, something that goes along. And I'll say the same thing with the warranty. We're very familiar with the warranties, the Firestones, and others, and they have, almost every roof membrane manufacturer today has requirements that if you're going to put solar on it, here's what you got to do, and there would be a pre-inspection and a post-inspection, and there would be a sign-off to make sure that your roof warranty would be intact. So those are all part of the standard process of doing a roof solar installation, and we are the most experienced company in the Commonwealth. As I said, we're up to almost 600 installations, and the large majority of that is rooftop. So you're not going to find anybody with more experience than who has done more, and we can provide many references.
And if we chose to, I'm sorry. If we chose
this is Gary Ludorf. I work for Select Energy as well, and I've been working with Michael. Look, roofs is what we do. As Michael said, or not Michael, Scott said, we've done 600 of these over the last 8 years, and we are special at doing these roofs. And Scott had mentioned that we meet with your roofing contractor ahead of time to make sure that what we're doing is not going to interfere at all, with your roof warranty. And he certifies that when he comes back, after we finish the install. He certifies that roof warranty has stayed in place. These new roofs, your roofs are flat. You don't have a pitch, or at least we probably didn't put anything on a roof. And so for flat roofs, it is very, very rare that we have penetration of that roof. We do everything we can that's possible not to penetrate the roof. And we do that by using a ballast system. It's a very advanced and engineered system. Now, secondly, you also have protections from the state and from the utility. There is a long process that we go through in order to get approval from the utility and then approval from the state. And Michael has in his possession a preliminary design. And on that design, you could see, different weather databases that we have used to simulate the arrays on your roof. And that tells us a lot about what to do and not to do with the placement of the array for your protection and the roof's protection. So the utility and the state won't let us move forward unless we do these simulations with approved software and approved weather databases. And that's what we've been doing for 10 years now.
I guess I have a question for you, Mike. What is our electric usage at this school on an annual basis? Do you know?
From a dollar figure, or
Yeah, from a dollar figure.
Dollar figure, we're roughly 380-ish thousand a year.
And the roof option is saving us $48,000, and we're selling off the excess, right?
Yep.
So why aren't we using all that excess sale to offset the entire electric bill here at the school, and then anything above that goes out? Maybe Select can help me with that.
Yes, Scott, this might be a question I need a little hand with. So, obviously, the roof array would generate almost all of the electricity we would potentially need within the building. Why wouldn't we see a bill down to zero rather than selling off the excess?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And the intention is always to keep as much in the building, used in the building as you possibly can. But when solar produces, it looks a little bit like a camel hump, right? So, when it starts up in the morning, it's lower. As you go out through the day, you produce more. Same thing goes as you go out through the year. So in the summer months, we produce more than the winter months. That may not match the load profile of the building exactly. So if there's months of the year where we're overproducing, right? As long as you can utilize them, we're going to keep them. But if for some reason you can't utilize that overproduction, then we want to sell it off to someone else so it doesn't hurt you from, you know, a PPA rate standpoint, because there's rules around the value of that energy once it's as a utility will call it, net exported. Okay, so we'll do all that analysis and work with you to keep as much behind the meter there as we can and offset as much of your bill as we can. We just don't want you to get hurt in any way by overproduction. So that's the analysis that we do in trying to put these systems together.
So once
The
we
other
sell,
thing
yeah,
that
excuse me,
the
so if
program
we sell it
requires
off,
is you have, I'm sorry?
if we sell it off, do we get a credit back for what we've sold off?
Yes, if you sell it off to another location, obviously for someone to take it, they're going to want, you know, some benefit. So let's say you sent them $100, right? You might charge them $90 and they keep 10 and you get 90 back. So that all gets worked out. We would help you facilitate that if you did have to send anything out on a net export. But the other thing I was going to say is these size systems, they require battery storage under the new program. So the other thing that's interesting is you have battery storage there and you have some overproduction. Can you store it in the battery and then redeploy it when you need it? And that's something else that we'll do all the analysis on, and that can provide, you know, additional savings rather than having to send it out. So again, that's all the work we would do, the due diligence we have to do to make sure the system's sized correctly and you're getting the maximum benefit from it.
So let me ask you a question, because was it Gary that was talking about the roofs and the warranties and all that? How good are you guys at footings and digging parking and doing the parking lots if we don't want you on the roof? And my next question is the battery storage for option 2. Would that something we could be, instead of sending that 2.2 out, could we bring it back into the building, or is that not an option at all? Is that too expensive?
Yeah, it's probably good. I mean, batteries at this point in time are, you know, to do large amount of power, it gets really, really expensive. So it's probably not going to pencil. That being said, we do have to provide a battery as part of any system, like I said, of that size. Your first question was, if you didn't want it on a roof, could we do it in the parking lot?
Right.
The challenge with that is, the answer is yes, right? But we have to see what kind of rate we can get you. It won't be as good of a PPA rate as the roof. And the reason for that is we have to put all that extra infrastructure, right? We got to dust foundations, build that metal structure, install the racking on top of it. We got to do all the groundwork, the trenching, you know, the repaving of the parking lot. It's much more expensive to do a canopy system. So we tend to lean on the rooftop first, because that's where we know we're going to be able to get you more savings behind the meter. If you really don't want it on the rooftop, then we absolutely can look at trying to do the system in the parking lot and keep as much of that, you know, behind the meter for you guys to use as we can. I just know from past experience, especially in National Grid's territory, that they just become much harder to make work because that structure is so expensive.
Okay.
This is Curtis LeMay speaking, another committee member. So space is obviously a major topic here, and obviously you know that we have a 75-acre campus, and the committee in question is always looking to save money. We're a very diverse committee, to the point that we're fortunate to have someone like Committeeman Giggy, who's also an attorney in his real life job. So I like to see that our I's are dotted and T's are crossed as well. I have not looked into this really in depth. If I need to, I would. But I would definitely concur with my colleague that we should get some guidance, if not a blessing, from our legal counsel. Thank you.
Can we move along?
Yeah, but from what I'm hearing, after all the discussions, is that there's really nothing ventured, nothing gained at this point. We have the option based on our own corporate, our council, saying that it looks fine, looks like everybody can get out, and it's just taking it to the next step. The next step may be a little bit more risk-taking on the part of the school. So at this point, based on council's suggestion and what I'm hearing, there's no obligation, there's no penalty if we choose to back out. We should take it to the next level and see if there's truly a savings and an ability to do the project. That's just a thought there based on what I've heard.
I agree with that.
And if council agrees that the letter of intent is just that we can move forward, I don't see why I wouldn't vote for that.
The only other thing I will say is that council and I did discuss this afternoon, potentially changing what I had included as the motion in the packet today, just to include language. It says that the vote tonight would be to authorize the school business administrator to finalize the terms of the letter of intent as accepted by the school business official and reviewed by legal counsel for the district. So that you would be authorizing me to sign after Peter and myself get to a place with Select that we feel the letter of intent has expressed everything that we discussed here today, and that it met the expectations.
And I would just maybe add one thing, that provided there's
just,
no
just
obligation.
to follow up on Michael's point there, this is Peter Mello, counsel. Just to find distinction, but just to be clear, what the vote would say, rather than the committee voting explicitly to execute the letter of intent in the form that has been presented to you tonight, it would authorize Michael as business administrator to execute the agreement upon completion of final terms acceptable to the business administrator and council. That would allow us the latitude to iron out any additional provisions and make any tweaks that we feel are needed based on additional discussions with Select. For example, I had mentioned to Michael, I personally would like to see other letters of intent Select is entered into with other school districts and the like, just to confirm that we get terms as favorable as the others and all that. And there are a couple of other potential tweaks that Michael and I have discussed. So rather than explicitly voting to execute the agreement, the committee's vote would be a vote to authorize Michael to execute the agreement once the document's been finalized with terms acceptable to Mike.
Right, and with the guidance that we choose not to have a financial obligation at this level. It's the next level that I understand everybody's going to be investing a great deal of time and effort into, and that'll allow us the opportunity to kind of evaluate things in a more prudent and diligent manner. So I think the goal here is to sign the letter of intent, no financial obligation. If we choose, just for whatever reason, arbitrarily, we don't want to go forward. But it allows them to lock in the rate. And from what I heard from Solar Select and its representatives, there would be no obligation, there would be no commitment. So I think that our council and our business manager can probably move in that direction with that guidance. So I guess I'm agreeing with council here that, yeah, you guys we're authorizing you the ability to sign if you meet that criteria.
I like the idea of solar. I really like what we've done with our roof. I really worry about what our roof has up there, and the years that it took to study it, to complete it, to satisfy it, and to have it functional again. I think there is a risk involved here that we don't know a lot about, and the assumed savings of up to $50,000 per year is 1/100th of our budget. It's about 10% of our overall usage of our electricity and such. And I don't know that I think it's worth looking into, simply because there's going to be a lot of time and effort by many parties, and there's going to be a great risk involved, as far as I'm concerned, for Greater Lowell Tech. So I, value your opinion, Mr. Gigi, and I thank you, everybody, but I unfortunately will not be supporting this.
Mike Knight.
Yep, Paul.
Mike Knight. Personally speaking, I'd like to table it. I don't feel as though I have enough information or that I've received enough information in advance to move forward with my vote tonight.
I'll second that if the motion. Table till next meeting.
Well, it sounds like if you do table it, that we're going to lose some favorability in the rate, so then it will become less likely to be a viable option. Right now, from what I'm hearing, if we explore it one level more, there's no obligation on our part, and we would be authorizing Mike with our council to take the next step without any risk to the school district of additional expense or financing. And I just think that may be a little premature if there's a favorable rate out there that could make it a viable project. There is a lot of questions in my mind, like you're giving up the right to develop this building upwards, and it can be very expensive if we need to expand or move locations. There's a lot of things that we haven't evaluated, but we don't really want to close the door if it's a viable option. I can respect my committeeman, Bahou, and nobody wants to waste anybody's time. It's a very interesting concept. There are 600 of these fields that Solar Select is responsible for. It does seem to save some money. Whether or not it's enough to make it, on balance, favorable to the school district, I don't know yet. It's a little premature. So I guess nothing ventured, nothing gained, like I said. I'm looking for solutions and not problems. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I think Solar Select's probably done a lot of these systems. They know a lot of the questions and concerns that we would bring forward. They probably have some response. Again, it's up to the buyer to beware, I guess. So if the project is going to go forward, all the I's and the T's would be dotted. And at this level, I'm not hearing that there's a financial obligation to take it one step further.
I just got one more question. So we're gonna work with the people that did the roof to make sure the warranty is still intact. There's no obligation on us at all. Going forward, right now, we're locked into a favorable rate. Is that what I'm getting at? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
So the first step of the project is to lock ourselves in and then check out the roof. Make sure the warranty is good, make sure, the stress, the roof can handle the stress. We don't void the warranty. That's what is that what we're gathering? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Scott, is that what you would say as well?
Yes, all the due diligence happens after this, but you're not committing to anything more tonight than for us to go out and work with you as a partner, lock in those rates, and then do those next steps with you.
Mr. Chairman, Curtis. Mr. Chairman, Curtis, how do you have any second thoughts on this right now, or you still want to move with your intent?
My intent is to get some more information, and I'm not prepared to vote on this tonight.
Okay. You have tonight's vote.
Mike, can I have the floor for a second before we finalize this, Mike?
Sure, you may.
So yeah, this is Gary Ludorf from Select Energy. Look, I think it has been said a couple of times, but there's a lot on everybody's mind here. So I just want to say this. It's important to understand that if you take more time and this moves into next year, then you will lose some very favorable rates due to the state regulations and the federal regulations. Okay, what that is that the affordability of the solar benefit declines appreciably. Now, the whole purpose of this letter of intent, and the reason why it's non-binding to the town, is to give you time that you're asking for to visit this and get comfortable with it. So the letter of intent only starts a period of investigation, but it allows you to do that investigation while protecting all of those incentives at the highest levels in 2020. Okay? So you get both ways. You get it both ways. You get to protect the incentive, and you get to do your investigation with no commitment whatsoever. So pushing that out to next year, that's a different story. I hope that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Who was that?
That was Gary Ludor from Select Energy.
Gary?
Yep.
I understand we're uncomfortable with it, but my thing is if we lose the favorable rate, we might as well just vote no on the
And
project.
just close the project down.
That's where I'm
That's
coming
where
from
we're
now. If you're giving us time and you're willing to expend the energy into making sure the warranty and the roof's gonna hold up, and our guy signs off on it and the roof's fine, and our guy's signing off on it and we're legally fine, I'd like to make the motion into the agreement to give us that time, because there's nothing binding to hold us. Kempton, we do drag the answer out. There's no financial obligation. If we don't like it, we walk away. I understand we're wasting our time, and I get it, but I'm Freddie, I'm with you. I went to school here when the roof leaked, and I know what you guys went through in the building, and I trust the people that built the building, that redid the remodel, that coming in saying, look, it's either yay or nay. They want to.
I understand exactly where you're coming from.
And
I hate to take a hard stance on it.
I get it.
But I'm looking at the roof, which we worked our ever living
No, I know.
butts off.
I know.
Never mind the renovation. I'm also looking at the assumed savings of $50,000 a year.
Well,
it's not a massive number.
No, it's not.
That's the big deal to me.
But we're not sure what the assumed savings is because they haven't given us a rate yet.
We're voting on the rate, and they've already considered what the assumed savings is. As far as that's what was in the packet. So
Right.
it's $50,000 a year. It's 1/100th of our budget. It's a little more than 10% of our overall utility costs.
So
That's
just
what
for
it is.
clarification, could there be more money?
It could be a greater
After-
savings.
Scott,
Could
Gary,
there be a bigger
based
savings?
on the preliminary estimates, do you think that there's a chance that that 49,000 number turns into a much greater number, or a very different number, or from your preliminary estimates generally, are you pretty close to the final?
So I'm going to defer to Scott for that if I can.
Yeah, I guess that's a relative thing. When you tell me it's, a very small percentage of your budget, and, what would make it big enough that it would be interesting then and would overcome the concerns of the risk that you might have. The incentives kind of are what they are. What we're trying to do is lock you into the best ones that we can so that we can give you the best possible rate you can. But if you're looking for me to kind of double that number, that's not going to happen. It's just, there's not that much, juice left in the orange, so to speak, with the current SMART program at the state level. I would say this, though. The nice part about being behind the meter is that we're going to give you a fixed rate for 20 years. We could do it for 25 years if you'd like, and it has a zero escalate. So I don't think you can do that with utility budget. Their rates change every 6 months. You're constantly having to renegotiate your supply contract. Over time, on average, about 3.5% to 4% a year, utility rates increase. That's not linear. It's up and down over the period of time. But it's 48 estimate in year one, but it's almost $1.6 million over the life of the term. So it is fairly significant, I think, in terms of real dollars when you consider you're making zero investment. Zero.
Sure. And $1.6 million is if you're also using if you're using the carport as well, and using our parking lots. 50,000 times 20 to me is 1 million.
Yeah, but he's talking about it going up over the 20 years. There's going to be an escalation. Mike, it raises the question, though, reading between the lines, that maybe the number is negotiable with Solar Select. There's a little bit of room, from what I'm hearing, if I'm reading between the lines, that they have some flexibility, but they're not going to go all the way. So it's an interesting, at this stage, nothing ventured, nothing gained. That's still where I'm at. And I'd like to preserve the highest rate that we can to explore this option.
I agree. And if we were to do this, I mean,
it's too bad it's at the last minute.
That's correct.
That's what I find.
We have to vote today on December 16,
Right.
and we don't really have as much as information as we'd love to have. And then if we choose to take another meeting on this on January 16th, we reduce that $50,000 number.
And it may not even be viable.
It may not even be worth it at that point.
That's right. So it's one of those things that.
And I'm only one committee member. I also understand that all we're doing is entering a feasibility study. That's what I know that we're doing. That's all I realize.
That's what
but
it is.
I just don't like the idea of screwing with our roof. How long has this building been here? Since 1971,
Well,
Jill?
we can mess with your parking lot, Freddie.
Yeah, the parking lot's a parking lot. You're talking about air rights, but 1971, and we just got the roof on, and it's currently 2020, on 2017.
Yeah, no.
This is where I am. Oh my! Like we can't. This is for the next generation. It's not for me. It's just for the next generation. And I'm just seeing the assumed savings is minimal in comparative to the whole thing.
I would have thought it would be more, but it is what it is.
That's all, and that's But I understand. I'm only one of 8.
I agree. I would prefer to see.
Sorry, Paul. George Tatsias is speaking at the moment. Sorry.
I would prefer to see
the meeting along.
The array in the parking lot, because it's for all intents and purposes a brand new roof, and there's got to be hundreds of penetrations to install this on a roof. So
I almost sense that they could probably do it as a floating system.
Excuse me, I don't know who that's talking, but there's no penetrations likely going to be required. This would likely be a ballasted system that would sit on top of the roof, and we would put a slip sheet between the bottom of the pan, which the ballast sits in, and the roof membrane to protect it. That's one way we would be able to ensure the warranty. So the large majority of the rooftop systems we install do not require any penetrations.
So it's like a floating system. It sits right on, and it floats and moves and does whatever it needs to do. It's an interesting engineering
then
feat.
you have the question of abrasion. I mean,
yeah, that's another issue. That's why they put the slip sheet.
Yeah.
If Matt Sheehan could speak real quick, I agree with Mr. Chairman Moran. I think everybody's spoken their piece. And if somebody wants to make a motion, let's just vote on this and move on.
Matthew, could I jump in?
Sure. No, go right ahead, sir.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Well, I don't know if this would assuage the committee's concerns, and I don't know if Select's in a position to address the committee desires. I know that Michael, he and I had discussed some of the terms of the agreement, and as I said, consistent with what Select said tonight, I think it's pretty clear it's non-binding. We did ask, Michael asked if we could insert some language that explicitly gave the district an option to terminate for convenience. Basically make explicitly clear that the district could walk away at any stage during the negotiation of the PPA for any reason. And I don't know if there was a final response and Select on that point. It would just make explicit, I think, what the understanding is. But I don't know, Michael, if you had any additional information on that.
No, we didn't get to a point where that would have been acceptable in the agreement at this point. But I won't speak for Select to say whether they could or could not do it. But it's not something that we had gotten to a point of agreement upon.
So did I just hear he would make it specific, address the
I
language?
think that was
the lawyer.
He's proposing,
Yeah, that was-
our attorney.
Okay.
Mello. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could, this is Scott again, to answer your question, Michael. I mean, I'm certainly willing to work with you guys on language along those lines. Typically, we don't do that because most people don't feel the LOI commits them to anything. So they didn't feel they needed it specifically. But if that's what makes the team here comfortable, then I'm certainly open to addressing that with Maura and you.
What do you have for motion right there?
The motion. Peter, could you help me out with that motion one more time?
Sure. You could move to authorize the business administrator to execute the letter of intent upon negotiation of final terms of the letter of intent acceptable to the business administrator and council.
Gonna go again?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Who seconded?
Attempted.
Mr. Bahou?
No.
Mr. O'Hare?
No.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
No.
Mr. Lemay?
No.
Mr. Moran?
No.
Did not pass.
All right, that's all I got for tonight.
Thanks for everyone's
Thank you,
time.
Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good to meet everyone.
Thank you.
Old business, new business. I would like to update the committee on the facilities naming committee meeting held November 24th. The committee met to approve the minutes from the October 7th meeting, as well as review and approve the draft meeting minutes from the February 2016 and March 2016 meetings. Because the committee members have changed since those meetings occurred, the minutes developed were based on documentation to help reconstruct events that occurred regarding the naming of the gymnasium floor. Minutes were approved and have been posted on the school's website. Committeemen motions tonight, I believe there are none. Report of subcommittees, none. A motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second it.
Mr. Bahou?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hare? Mr. O'Hare?
Yep.
Mr.
Yes.
Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.